need to move somewhere here. Watch out, man. So scared. Watch out.
Wait, just send me the photo.
Yeah, that's all right. You do so. All right, we're good. All right, that's the favorite candidate. You guys make sure you have to be flat. All right, we'll take a bottle of water.
Time to come to the first ever Franklin County Candidate Forum. We're excited to have you all here tonight. I'm Joel Hepker, Vice President of External Relations here at East Central College. On behalf of the college, it is certainly our pleasure and honor to host tonight's event. But before we begin the event, please rise as the East Central College students Courtney Burris, Jennifer Como, and Crystal Reed lead us in the national anthem.
Say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the brightest red day, the most mysterious, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, ladies. Well done. Thank you. Take a moment to recognize the groups that came together to put on tonight's event. That would include college students, employees, community members, and of course, our candidates. Thanks to the ECC Student Government Association, the Civic Community Engagement Committee, Franklin County Democrats, Franklin County Republicans, and tonight's moderator, Jason Rosenbaum from St. Louis Public Radio. Would you please take a moment and give them a round of applause for their efforts? Are there any elected officials that are not participating in tonight's forum that are in attendance? Of course, you're all very dark. I can't see any hands being raised. We would like to give them a chance to come up and introduce themselves if they are in the audience. I don't see anyone. Okay, very good. And again, thank you for being here, to our candidates, for everyone that came out tonight. It's really an honor for us for East Central College to be the center of this forum and really be and see this democratic process unfold. If you'd like to ask any of the candidates any questions, two ways to do it. You can fill out a question. There's some paper outside available, and there, I believe there's a bowl handy up there. You can drop it off there. If it's for a specific race, make sure you put that on there. And we'll also have students walking around microphone, I believe, if you'd like to raise your hand and ask a question.
I have a question.
Yes,
What if I have their names on the index card
that's okay.
for church? Could they read them?
Yeah, you just drop it off. Just drop it off in the pulpit.
Okay, I'm almost done.
Okay, she's almost done.
I'm sorry, I'm slow.
You're fine. To start, again, thank you so much for attending. And to start tonight's forum, we'll turn it over now to Jason Rosenbaum to begin tonight's event. Jason, there you are.
Hi, everybody. Had to put my water down for a second. I want to thank East Central College for bringing me here, and to all the candidates who have agreed to participate. Missouri has gone through a titanically important year in 2018. We had an unprecedented situation where our governor resigned, and we have a new leadership in Jefferson City that's substantially different. And what'd you say?
It's a lot better.
Well, I'm not going to make any editorial comments on that, but I will make this editorial comment. I think that situation showcased how important it is for voters to be informed about who goes to their state legislature and to local offices. And that's one of the reasons I'm so happy to be moderating this forum today. I'm going to give everybody a little sense of how it's going to work tonight. There are several candidates who are running for some local offices who are not opposed, are in one case is running for a judicial post that I can't really question them about due to Missouri Bar Association restrictions, that are going to come up and say their piece for a few minutes. Then once we have particular races where both the Republican and Democratic candidates are in attendance, they're going to be on stage with me for about 15 to 20 minutes. I'm going to ask them a series of questions. There's no time limit for the answers, but if they do start filibustering, I will gently tell them to wrap their answers up. For some of the races that candidates are here, but not all the candidates in that particular race are here, I will either read a statement from the candidates that have statements, and for the candidates that are here, I will ask them questions for about 7 to 10 minutes. They made the effort to come here tonight. I think that in especially the cases for some of the state offices, I do want to give them a little bit of time as well. You should apply for all the candidates too, not just those. And if there's no other questions, although I wasn't asking for questions, by the way, I am asking for questions, as was mentioned before. If you have a question for a specific candidate in a particular race, make sure to put it in that green bowl over there. I will be pulling some questions and asking them as time goes on. They're going to be brought to me as we're doing this forum. And without further ado, let's start with a couple of the candidates that are running unopposed. Tim Baker for County Clerk, come on up here.
Thank you very much for having me this evening. My name is Tim Baker, and I am running for the office of County Clerk. I won the August 7th election, so I'm running unopposed in the November election. I am a lifelong resident of Franklin County. My background is in manufacturing. My company, our family is still in a manufacturing company called Baker's Ice Pacific, and we very actively involved in the communities that I've been in. Just great to be here tonight, and there's really not a lot else to say except thank you very much for everybody's support in August, and I look forward to serving you as your next county clerk.
Chris, can I still write Kyle's name on the November 6th ballot? I'm not really sure who Kyle is.
That was my comment. Actually, the answer is yes, you can. I do not know what the actual date is for a write-in candidate to be an official write-in candidate. There's a process for that eliminates people like Mickey Mouse and Darth Vader and people like that have been written in. So the answer is yes, you can. But I don't know if it'll count if he did not file as an official write-in candidate.
And I will just add, if he ran against you in the primary, I do believe that there are restrictions against people that lost from being independent writing candidates. I'm not 100% sure about that. So, but I'm pretty sure that there are some restrictions against having those votes count, if I'm not mistaken.
But you were more than welcome to write that name in us.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Doug Trentman, who's running for county collector. Give him a round of applause, everybody.
Yeah, my name is Doug Trentman. I won the August primary for the Collector of Revenue Office. I'm running unopposed in November. I ran for the Collector of Revenue job because I am Linda's chief deputy. I've worked in the office for 6 years. So we've already started our nice smooth transition. We're working right now, rolling in the new tax year. So very busy in the office, but kind of like Tim, I don't really have too much to say. Good. Anybody want to ask me any questions? Go ahead.
Are you going to collect revenue?
Yeah, absolutely. That's our job.
There you go. Thank you very much.
I don't think we have any questions for you, so. Is there a question in there?
No, but I have one personal one.
If that's okay.
Yes.
You're more than welcome to ask multiple questions and multiple candidates, I want to make it clear, but we're just going to try to do the same thing for each one. The next person that we have is, he is not here, so we have Bill Stahl tonight, and he's going to speak for a few minutes.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, East Central, for having us all out tonight. My name is Bill Salters, and I want to be your next county municipal judge. A little bit about my background. I graduated from the University of Missouri Columbia in 1985 and Washington University School of Law in St. Louis. In 1988, I'm licensed to practice law in both Illinois and Missouri. Over the years, I've worked on different cases from as far away as Portland, Maine, to LA, out in California. My favorite place to practice, though, is right here at home in Franklin County. You might ask yourself, why is this election or judgeship important for you? Well, if on the way home tonight, you're west of Union, you're pulled over by a county sheriff, a deputy sheriff, and you receive a speeding violation, well, that's something that might come before the county municipal court. And I want to be the judge that would hear that case if something like that happened. I want to talk about maybe 2 items that could improve the court and the operation of it. I have an interest in alternate sentencing, such as community service. That's a good way for some folks to address a violation of that nature. And then the other thing that I think is important is that we can get the county ordinances on the county website, get that published there. My name is Bill Starbury. I want to be your next municipal judge. Thank you again.
6th senatorial district, which includes all of Franklin County and parts of western St. Louis County. I'm pretty sure that my dad's former house in Chesterfield is in this district, so I am definitely taking a personal interest in this. Please welcome to the state Republican, incumbent state senator Dave Schatz, and Democratic challenger John Keane. Feel free to have a seat and take a microphone. These are very comfortable chairs. Shout out to East Central College students. So before I ask you guys any questions, I'm going to give you each a minute or 2 to introduce yourselves and just to provide a basic rationale for why people in Franklin and St. Louis County should vote for you. So I'll start with John.
All right. My name's John Keane, and I'm running for state senate in our 26th Senate District. I am a professional musician, singer, songwriter, producer, and instructor and recording artist. I've also spent many years as a foster advocate and provider. I was born and raised in St. Charles, Missouri, spent many years in Boston, Massachusetts, and now call Franklin County my home, along with my wife of 10 years, Michelle, who's in here somewhere. I decided to run for office because I feel like our state and our country are kind of running into a ditch. And I know some people have done very well, and some people have not. Working in the foster system has had me dealing with people who have not done so well for a great number of years. I think that our kids need better schools. I think that our teachers need better pay. I think our workers need better jobs. And I think our businesses should have the opportunity to do well. I think everybody should have the opportunity to do well. I have a mission that, you may have noticed the Republicans, I kind of introduced myself to everybody, including my opponent Dave, you know. I want to represent everybody. And I think that my mission is to make Franklin County, St. Louis County, Missouri, better for everybody. So whether we had a kid graduate from Eureka, which is a very good school, they're also a very well-funded school in Rockwood. And as you go down to 44, the schools are struggling more as you get toward the middle of the state. I would like to work on addressing those issues and making sure that every kid has access to a quality education. We've had a family farm for 130 years. So I want to address issues of the struggling family farmer and still be aware of the business owners and the white-collar workers in Chesterfield or even anywhere else in the state, because I think it's okay to make money. We just need to be fair in how we distribute it. I'm John Key, and I hope to be your state senator in the 26th Senate District next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Senators, the faculty and the folks that put this together, the Franklin County folks that were able to bring us together, I think it's fantastic that we have the opportunity to inform constituents, and I appreciate the people that are here that are doing more than the average person. They're coming out and getting information on the candidates that will be supported in November. My name is Dave Schatz. I am the current state senator for the 26th Senatorial District, which encompasses all of Franklin County and western St. Louis County, the cities of Eureka, Wildwood, Chesterfield Valley area. I served in the legislature, entered the legislature in 2011, was elected in 2010 to the House, served 4 years there, moved over to the Senate, and have served the past 4 years from that change. I have been born and raised in Franklin County. This November I will be 55 years old. Lived all my life in the Sullivan area and native to the area, and continue to live today on the farm where I was born and raised. I am very fortunate and blessed to have married my wife Shara, that we've been married this year will be our 31st year of marriage, blessed with 5 children. Thank you.
You can applaud for that.
Had 5 wonderful children, and probably my greatest accomplishment right now, I would tell you, is my grandkids. I have 4 grandsons, Caden, Nolan, Tyson, William, and I have 1 on the way. We've got about a basketball team started, so we're going to hopefully, and maybe this will be a girl, hopefully we get a girl here at some point in time, but then those are the passion. That's why I think it's necessary for me to be in Jeff City, because the future resides in those young kids, and what kind of state are they going to grow up in, what kind of environment they're going to grow up in. That's the passion I have, and the reason why I serve is because of that. It's difficult. It is being away and being gone from them is sometimes challenging, but also what's necessary in order to make sure that Missouri is a great place to work and live and raise a family. So I thank you for being here, and with that, I'll go back to Jason.
All right, feel free to applaud so we can get through as many as possible. I'm going to start with one that came on this index card that could eventually be right in the next 4 years or may not be right. If elected, will you support right-to-work legislation? For context, right-to-work is shorthand proponents use for a policy that bars unions and employers from requiring workers to pay dues as a condition of employment. This policy was passed by the legislature in 2017, but just repealed by the voters earlier this summer. Senator Schatz, I think you voted for right-to-work. My question is, would you bring this issue up again?
I think the issue is over. I think the voters have voted. I think the issue is a done deal. I don't think there's any shape, form, or fashion where the legislature would attempt to bring this up. Obviously, Obviously then, again, I think that with the results that we've seen from that, it was a very effective campaign, and the voters spoke, and obviously I believe that's it.
John?
I oppose right to work and any workers' policy that's going to affect workers, be it tort reform, be it diminishing workers' comp rights and so forth. Right to work is wrong for Missouri. I believe I have parents and most of my family are teachers. And I have a lot of friends and neighbors who are iron workers, who are carpenters. And in doing this, you go to a lot of meetings. And I've been going to a lot of foster meetings as well for a long time. And when you go to these meetings, there are people who are convicted. They're concerned about issues that affect their life, whether it's a kid or a certain issue or what have you. And when I go to a union meeting and I see these cats, men and women, that are deeply concerned about how they're going to take care of their family, a 30-year-old, 40-year-old man or woman who is dependent upon us, dependent upon you. You worked hard to get into a trade to be able to make an adult wage and have a pension and have benefits, and they need that, and they worked hard to earn it, and so they'd like to keep that. So I would oppose right to work and any anti-worker legislation. I appreciate that business owners want to make money, but I think we can figure out a way to make sure workers get paid as well.
Let's talk about an issue that, again, please hold your applause until the end so we can get through as many questions. Let's talk about something that is going to be on the ballot in November. That's Proposition D, which is a gas tax increase. I wanted to hear both of your opinions on this, whether you would vote for this when you go into the ballot box, and whether you think it's a good or a bad idea to raise gas taxes for transportation, because as everybody in Franklin County knows, the roads and transportation infrastructure here has been an issue for years, if not decades. It's very possible that increasing the gas tax could do quite a bit for Franklin County. So I'll go in backwards order now. John, you get the first hit at that.
I think funding our government is challenging because, as Dave well knows, we have to figure out a way to spend the revenue that we already have, and we have to split it up. So I understand the challenges around that. There's a finite amount of money that has to go to schools, that has to go to roads. Our roads are typically funded through the fuel tax. We actually have, I believe, the 49th lowest fuel tax in the United States, something like that. We have maybe the 7th most roads, I believe, in the entire United States, in the state of Missouri. There's a lot of roads to take care of for not very much money. The problem is most people don't want to pay taxes. I don't think any of us want to pay taxes. But taxes is how we have schools. It's how we have the stage that we're sitting on. It's how we have the roads. It's how we have public schools and a lot of things that we need. Unfortunately, a fuel tax like that is regressive. So the value of the tax over time, which we haven't had a fuel tax raise in a number of years, is going to be regressive due to the fact that we have the rising cost of living, and we have inflation and so forth. But how are we going to fund it? I think we're just stuck with, we've had lower rates that have not passed. And now we're getting to the point where we have bridges and we have roads that need to be fixed. And if we're going to do it through the fuel tax, then we have to do that. There's been concern in some people that have talked about the fact that electric cars and some other technologies are getting big. We talked about perhaps a vehicle use tax that applies a tax that will perhaps apply to a broader swath of people. Conversely, people in the rural areas who drive a lot are concerned about fuel tax because they feel that it may be a bit unfair if you have to drive an hour everywhere that you go. So I think the fuel tax right now might be the best solution that we have. My concern with it is that only about 30% of it actually goes to the roads and 70% goes to the state patrol. So I'm not sure how that balance works out. I feel like maybe we need a little bit more on the roads that have been underfunded for a very long time. So that would be a concern how that is split up.
Senator?
Obviously, Jason, I've served in the House. I was the chair of transportation. In the Senate, I'm the chair of transportation. I was the one that worked through the legislation and offered the amendment to put Proposition D on the ballot. I'm very familiar with the distribution of the funds. This is basically a user fee. The way that our roads have been paid for the last 98 years has been through a motor fuel tax, what I'll call a motor fuel user fee. The users pay for it. Again, stated we have the 7th largest footprint in the state. We are funded around 44th in the nation as we fund our roads and bridges. The distribution, obviously, it's not, 3/4 of it does not go to fund the highway patrol. In this particular instance, though, the highway patrol is funded from the motor fuel user fee. So we do pay for our highway patrol, and the safety part of our roads comes from the motor fuel tax. But it is a dedicated funding. That's the only way that we pay for our roads and bridges, through the motor fuel tax. We do not play through that through general revenue. It does not come from that. So therefore, I have advocated that this is something that we're going to put before the voters. This will create, in 10 years, this will create about 6,000 jobs. These are 6,000 good jobs. Typically, they're going to be high-wage jobs that we have not had in the past, and so I would be a strong advocate for Proposition D, and I would hope everyone would support it, because when you look at the issue, and I look at it from a business perspective, the inflation has eroded the buying power. The 17-cent gas tax was last raised in 1996. It now has the purchasing power about 8 cents. And we're just basically, by increasing this 2.5 cents over the next 4 years, gets us back to being able to buy what we could in 1996. So when you look at it from that perspective, it's the only thing we really have to do. And I will say this, there's an equivalency factor that's been put in there to bring alternative fuels up to paying the same rates that the motor vehicle fuels are paying. So we've addressed that in this particular piece of legislation. So the electric cars, the natural gas, CNG cars, they're all being paying the equivalency of what the motor fuel tax is taken care of in this particular bill.
Thank you both for your answers on that. I want to talk about another issue that I think would be very important in Franklin County, that's prescription drug monitoring program. I remember when I was running for the Washington Missourian that the meth crisis in Franklin County was at its peak. And from talking with now former presiding commissioner John Riesheimer, the opioid crisis has also hit Franklin County in the last couple of years. What would be your opinion on setting up a prescription drug monitoring program, and how would you be able to get it through the Senate, given that there is some right of center opposition to it? Some of it from Senator Rob Schaaf, who's leaving, but some of it may still be lingering. I'm going to start with Senator Schaaf first.
Yeah, thank you. Again, obviously, Jason, that's a piece of legislation that I had carried. I've been working on the drug issues here in Franklin County the whole time I've been in the legislature. It's very important to me. Obviously, we're seeing deterioration of individuals and lives being destroyed because of these types of drugs, and the opioids is just another problem we've been facing. I sponsored the prescription drug monitoring bill last year. Obviously, we ran into opposition by one particular senator. He was basically the roadblock that prevented that from becoming law. It was passed through the House. It was at the point where we couldn't pass it through the Senate. It was prohibited from Senator Rob Schaaf. When we worked diligently on this, I've been working on this for, like I said, a multitude of years, because this prescription drug monitoring gives a doctor the ability to make an informed decision on whether or not to prescribe those drugs. And that's literally what prescription drug monitoring does. And how I asked every doctor that testified in the committee, if you could make a decision with information, are you a better doctor or worse doctor? Everyone to the point would tell me, if we have information, we can make a good decision and prevent people that may be on the road to addiction from getting to that point. We can give them help before it gets too late. I have advocated for it. We will continue to advocate for it. Obviously, I believe it needs to be a statewide initiative. We've seen that the state, it needs to be across the state so that everybody has the information, has access to the information. We need to protect patient information. It's critical that we do that, and to give people the faith and confidence that that information will not be accessed by anyone other than the doctors that are typically trying to get information. But I've been a strong advocate for it and will continue to do so.
John.
And I saw that piece of legislation. I appreciate that, actually. I know it's I worked for a spine surgeon and for a number of years, and that was an issue of people who were in extreme pain having to go on opioids to try to deal with their pain, and inevitably a lot of them became dependent on opioids, and then we're trying to get more, and then we go to other routes to try to deal with that. The opioid addiction issue is probably touched everybody in this room. I know it's touched my life. I had a student that was 23 that was gunned down in South City trying to buy opioids a couple years ago. And he came from a lot of money. So having money or not having money doesn't really seem to make a difference, whether you can get hooked on such a thing. But we really have to work a lot harder on trying to not only prevent the people from getting on be it from the prescription drug direction or just from the party drug, so to speak, direction. We have to work hard on getting people to not access those drugs to begin with or not abuse them in the case of prescription drugs. But we also need to do things in our community to try to give people an opportunity that's something other than developing a drug habit. And then if they do develop a drug habit, I appreciate the treatment court that you guys passed here last week, the statewide treatment court option. I've gotten some word from several addicts as well as several prosecuting attorneys that the treatment courts are a good way that's a little bit more robust in trying to get addicts to get themselves straightened out. The goal being that A, they don't become addicts, B, that we can somehow wean them off of the drug, and also try not to have these people in jail and be repeating offenders that keep coming to our jail. We're building a new jail, and I would argue that a lot of the people that we're building a jail for are there for drug-related offenses that are often associated with opioids. So I think that my desire to have better schools and better jobs and so forth all go towards and better healthcare access, go all towards dealing with all these issues, be it from the prescription direction or some other direction.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to another audience question. Do you believe money is speech, and how do you plan to fight dark money and create transparency? I'm going to be a bit more specific here because this became a major issue over the last 2 years. Do you believe or would you support legislation that would require a politically active 501c4 to disclose their donors if they spend money either for candidates or for ballot initiatives? So I'll start with John first.
Absolutely. Dark money is a problem. Prices went down for that. I'm a Democrat, in case you didn't know. The money doesn't flow very copiously to Democrats these days. So I am running against someone who has $300,000 in the bank-ish and gets a lot of money from people who have PACs and have corporate business interests. And the vast majority of my donations are coming from individuals, from people, because that's my desire is to serve the voters, not a corporate interest who will give me $2,600 or back in the day give me $50 or $100. And we don't do that anymore. But yes, dark money can then funnel in other funds. But if you go out in the hall, we all have push cards and we all have signs and we all are going to drive around Franklin County. And Dave and I are both going to have 4x4s and 4x8s and stuff. You probably have to do it with me, but he can afford it, and it's what we do in elections. And it's very expensive. We're tossing, Simmons has just so many signs that cost $10, $20, $50, $100,000 to run a campaign, even in a county or a house election, and there's so much money. I think a clean legislation, a clean amendment is a start, but we need to do a lot to make becoming engaged in our government and getting elected not dependent on, and this is true as a Democrat too, how much money you raise. I think we really, I just really think it's important so that, whether Dave, who has a lot of resources, can run, God bless him, or somebody like me or somebody else in the audience that doesn't have those kind of resources can also have the opportunity to be involved in government and making decisions.
And Senator, just to add a little bit to this question before you answer it, some of these 501c4s that are connected to Greg has actually attacked some of your colleagues, so I'm sure that you have opinion on this that may be based off that experience. So feel free to answer and also possibly respond to John as well.
Sure. Obviously, I think that transparency is the key, and finding a way to make sure that obviously when you're supporting candidates and ballot initiatives and things like that, I think there needs to be transparency in that. So we need to find a way to make sure that those are treated that way. There's probably some 501c3s or C4s that obviously maybe are not. That some donors probably want to remain anonymous in those types of situations, but I think that we need to address it in the political realm to make sure that if we want to have transparency in an election, see where the money's coming from, obviously, I think that's the right way to go. Again, when one of our fellow colleagues was attacked by some of the dark money, obviously that was a big issue on the Senate floor, and was very distasteful, and it was not well received at that point. But to the extent that my opponent obviously discussing about the campaign funds, and my campaign account is obviously where my donors supported me, but obviously he's calling the same people who donated to my campaign, asking them for campaign contributions as well. So I've had multiple lobbyists in Jeff City have commented on the phone calls from his campaign staff asking for donations, so I just want to make sure that we clear that up too.
And just before we get to the next question, is that true, John?
I am unaware of that, but I do have someone else working for me, so
Okay.
he making some calls that I am unaware of. But I have not been trying to get PAC money, or I think I've been trying to get people to support my campaign.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually have been pretty square that I don't want PAC money.
All right, I wanted to make sure you had a chance to respond before we move on to the next question. We'll have about 2 or 3 more questions before we get on to the next one. This is also from the audience. This is an issue that one of my colleagues, Eli Chen, has written about a lot. How do you feel about strengthening protections from coal ash pollution, which I think is a big issue in Franklin County, given, I guess, the Hammering plant? I think is it Labadee, if I'm not mistaken. So I'll start with Senator Schatz on this one.
Well, obviously, anything we do in the environment, we put as many protections as we can to make sure that what we're doing is operating safe and free to that. So I'm a strong advocate of taking care of our environment, but I also realize that as we do the types of things we burn coal. I mean, it's a reality of what happens. It happens in the plant, but we've got to store that in the most safe, prudent fashion as we can. And so I don't know how else to answer it other than with support that.
John.
We have a variety of environmental issues in the St. Louis area, the Labadee plant being one of those issues. CAFO is another issue. I went to Francis Howe High School. There's a Superfund site right next door, so that is something they cleaned up. I have friends that from North County that grew up next to Coldwater Creek. My mother stays in St. Charles County, and there's the Westlake issue there as well. I think that these are all business-related issues, and when you do business, I think you have a responsibility for the neighborhood, the community around you, be it a CAFO, be it the power plant, so whatever. And I think we've learned a lot over the last, since the Mallinckrodt thing and making atomic bombs in the 30s and 40s about how and why we would store waste and where we store it, what we do with it. But nonetheless, we're about 4 miles or so from the Ameren plant, and the smoke comes out of an unscrubbed smokestack, and we have coal ash laying out in the floodplain. So of course it's a concern. If you have out here, when I say out here, in the rural areas, a lot of people have a well and septic. So if you have the good fortune of having a well from, say, the St. Albans, let's say, the water company, then their wells may be 1,000 feet down. If you do not have that good fortune, you live around a place that's polluting, and your well is, say, 100 feet down, the pollutants from that field or from wherever those pollutants are laid can very easily seep into your water. I think we just have to keep, this is something we've been doing for a long time, and we need to keep working away at coming up with renewable fuels and other energy sources, and it will take time, but I just think we have to, with the legislature, we need to keep pressing on it, and hopefully in the near future, we will close plants like Labadee Power Plant and repurpose it, because we obviously need the energy, and we can turn that over into another industry that will still employ people and give us power, but fewer pollutants in our air, water, and soil.
This is the second to last question. It's also from the audience. What do you think about guns in churches, schools, daycare, bars, etc.? I guess I'll kind of elaborate on that. I think that there has been legislation in the past to maybe loosen local restrictions on those types of things. Beyond just responding to the question, I'll have both of you kind of express your opinion on restricted firearms. And I think, John, you go first on this one.
Sure. I grew up with guns, and I think many of us, and Dave grew up in the country too, I grew up in St. Charles when I was like little, so I had a BB gun. That was kind of my
St. Charles used to be the country.
It was. St. Charles is kind of like Pacific or Sullivan, I would say. Now it's totally not. But, I had my first AZ-BB gun when I was in the single digits, which then became a .22 pistol, shotgun, and stuff like that as I grew up. So I grew up, and we had a farm, and we'd always be on the farm and down the trestle and shooting at things. It was fun, and I was also taught a respect for weapons. So that was before the age of social media or the internet or any of that stuff. And so perhaps there was less of an opportunity for people to share their weapons or their experiences with weapons or their passions about weapons. I personally do not have a problem with guns. I have a problem with people getting shot. We do have probably more of a problem with illegal guns out there that would be accessed by a criminal. We unfortunately also have a problem with legal guns, quote unquote, that are used in either suicide or homicide. I think that we need to do better to make sure that people who have a gun are responsible gun owners. We need to do better with our background checks. We need to close the loopholes that allow people to buy a gun without going through a background check. So that if someone has a gun, be it a pistol or a flamethrower, and I'm being sarcastic somewhat, but that we know that that person is a responsible gun owner that can enjoy sporting. They can shoot targets, they can go out and hunt, they can protect their homes, but we have a pretty good idea that they're responsible gun owners. When it comes to putting it in other spaces, in public spaces, again, my family's all public educators. Even my fussy old dad, who would probably vote for Dave, he would. But he is not fond of the idea of having his teachers, from his experience, having a firearm in the school. I think that perhaps having a resource officer and doing better about having security plans, though unfortunately I hear from a lot of parents that those security plans that are in place, because we do have a worry and concern about school shootings, actually scare and traumatize the students. So we probably need to address that somehow, but I feel like we have to be judicious in where we can put a weapon. And if somebody doesn't want a weapon where they are, I think we should give them the right and freedom to not have a weapon in their space if that's their desire.
Senator?
Go back to give me your question.
Okay, so
I
then,
got lost.
yeah.
It's
So
pretty lengthy.
the question was, what do you think about guns in churches, schools, daycare, bars, etc.? And then I kind of followed up on that and say, I mean, do you support legislation that would make it harder for local governments to restrict guns in those places? And also just giving you a chance to provide your philosophy on gun rights as well. So yes, it was a jumpy question.
Pretty broad question.
Yes.
Obviously, I've been a strong advocate of the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I believe that law-abiding citizens that are law-abiding, again, typically we don't find ourselves, it's not a problem with people that are law-abiding citizens and the guns. That's not the issue. It's the people that are willing to break the laws. What we really have, what the problem in our society today is that we devalue life to a point where people are getting shot. That we have a problem with that. And we need to address that. Not necessarily, it isn't the weapon that's the problem. It's the heart of the individual that's the problem. If we don't start addressing that, it doesn't make any difference. We take away the guns, they'll use hammers, they'll use cars, they'll use something else to inflict harm and pain and punish on people. But having a person to be able to protect themselves, I believe is absolutely inherent for we allow people to be able to do that. Because the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is to have a good guy to have one. And so we have a strong advocate, and I guarantee you that anytime we restrict that, we create environments where people become prey. Anywhere where you have a no-gun zone, a bad guy can go in there and create havoc. They're a whole lot less hesitant to go where they know somebody's going to shoot back. So I think we have to be very careful in how and where we restrict people's access to the carry guns.
This is my final question for you both. What is one thing you think current Governor Mike Parson is doing well? And what is one thing that you would think that he needs improvement on and you may want to work with him on if you're state senator? I'll start with you, Senator Schatz, who used to serve with the governor in the Senate. So
it's going to be hard because I think we do a lot of things well. But I'll give you a couple. I'm going to try to be brief.
yeah.
His communication with the legislature is going to be fantastic because obviously his relationships that he has forged by serving, the time he served there, is invaluable in working together across the aisle and bringing consensus together. I think his focus on workforce development, one of the biggest challenges we have facing Missouri right now, is to have a willing, able, and ready workforce. And so he's going to focus on workforce development. He's a strong advocate for infrastructure investment. And literally, as an employer, the biggest challenge that I find is finding enough people, qualified people, to do the work that we have to get done. Unemployment is an all-time low, and so workforce development is probably the #1 priority, and he's taking that head on. He's going to hopefully make Missouri a place that's very attractive, because businesses will not come here and locate unless they have a ready-to-hand workforce.
John?
Well, and I appreciate that. Dave has worked with the gentleman in the legislature for a long time. I try to talk to as many people as I can, and I will talk to a Republican. We're all in this together, quite honestly. And I think that politics makes us sometimes very oppositional, and when we're oppositional, we end up with gridlock, and then nothing gets done. I think that's a very big frustration in the government. If we need a better workforce, we need to educate them. And if we're going to educate them, we need to fund the education. We need to make sure that people outside of an area that has good funding for schools are also have funding for their schools to give their kids the opportunity. So if I go from Rockwood schools down to St. Clair and Sullivan and beyond, that those students in those districts are also getting the same kind of education so they can become a vital part of the workforce. We also need to work on our skilled trades. And I get the impression, based on votes in the Senate and the political climate from the GOP, that they seem to be very against union labor, and that is my impression, and many others. I think that we need to support the trades. I think the trades are a great way to be able to enter into the workforce, not a college path, and still earn a middle class living so that you can have a decent salary, so that you can have a pension. I think these are things that we have to focus on as a state, because I think that when we support all the people and we give all the people an opportunity to get better jobs, to be a better worker, that it will truly make us a better state. But we have to focus, in my opinion, on making sure that people outside of the areas where it's easy to get an education are also getting these opportunities. And I think it's very different, in my opinion, between the urban areas and the rest of the state. We have to do a better job of bringing that together so that everybody has those opportunities to have a middle class lifestyle.
Thank you guys so much for talking with me today. So I'm going to give you maybe a minute or two to introduce yourself and give kind of a synopsis of why you're running for Congress. And you can sit down, by the way.
I didn't know if you wanted to do this, inside the actor studio style, or just.
Feel free to sit down.
So I'm Katie Gephardt. I am running in the 3rd Congressional District for U.S. Congress. And just to give you a little bit of background about me, I'm a wife, a mother. I'm a native Midwesterner. I grew up in rural and suburban Illinois, right around St. Louis, and I've lived in Missouri for the past 13 years. And my schooling background is I'm a proud public school graduate. I have also gone on to college. I earned my bachelor's degree in chemistry and a master's degree in chemistry as well. The master's is from St. Louis University. I've been working in industry for the past 14 years, and in those 14 years, I've picked up a lot of skills in terms of problem solving and collaboration within the research that I've been able to do. And I'm also a certified Six Sigma Green Belt, and for those of you who don't know what that is simply a certification process where you go through a new process improvements, method development, and look for ways to fix defects and make processes a lot smoother. So with my background in science and STEM, I think that it kind of makes me uniquely qualified for this position, because my job is to literally solve problems every day, big and small. And I'm not naive enough to think that just going to Washington, I can snap my fingers and all of our problems will be solved. But I am trained to look at problems and see where we can make the improvements. But I'm also experienced in working and collaborating with others so that we can take in all of the information and get the best data that we can so that we can make the best decisions for many of the issues going forward. And that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to run. I saw a lot of opportunities for improvement in our system when it comes to either healthcare or education or ensuring that we have quality jobs that pay a living wage for our people out here. So there are many ways that we can improve in this country, and that's one of the reasons why I'm running.
Thank you very much. And you're running against Republican Blaine Luetkemeyer, the incumbent.
Where's Boyne?
He's not here tonight with this. So I'm going to ask you about 3 questions. I want to ask you about the Donald Trump's steel and aluminum tariffs, because this is a district where I can see it going both ways. There's a lot of manufacturing in the 3rd Congressional District, and there's also a lot of agriculture. And some of the manufacturers, especially steel and aluminum, have had mixed reactions to the tariffs. A lot of farmers are really upset about that. So I'd like to hear your opinion on that, because that could be a big issue if you get elected to Congress.
Sure, thank you. From what I've been hearing from both the folks who work in manufacturing, mostly the auto industry, and also from farmers, like you said, they're not happy about what's going on with the tax, or excuse me, with the tariffs, which essentially are a sales tax increase on us, if we want to think about it that way. The one way that I think we need to, that people have expressed, is that, especially with the agriculture, with the soybeans, the majority of soybeans that we sell in Missouri go to China, and they've stopped purchasing those. And so there are a lot of farmers who are very nervous about being able to make their ends meet, especially the family farmers, the smaller ones who don't have a whole lot of leverage with a lot of the larger agricultural companies, and who don't have a lot of leverage with the banks to be able to borrow more money or get what they need so that they can service their vehicles and run their farms the way that they need to run them. When it comes to steel and aluminum tariffs, with the auto industry, I know that that's not something that they wanted, and because it is going to make, it's going to cause a lot of cost increases to their supply chain, depending on where they are making their parts and where they're assembling the vehicles, and so they're not happy about that. Now, overall, I do think that we need to make some improvements in terms of how we work with other companies other countries when it comes to trade, because there are some issues when it comes to making sure that we have good jobs here, that we're not just sending everything overseas. But I do think that in terms of making sure that we have affordable products for people to purchase, the tariffs are not the way to go.
What do you think of the tax cut that President Donald Trump signed into law last year? Would you have voted?
I do oppose the tax cut that was signed into law this past year, mostly because it more benefits big business than it does the average everyday American. I myself, I did see a little bit of a paycheck increase, but only about $40 a month. And I do understand for those of us who don't make a lot, who essentially live paycheck to paycheck, $40 increase in your monthly paycheck can be a big deal. But those are actually supposed to expire, and also with gas being more expensive and a few other general groceries, everything like that, where we're seeing costs go up, that gets eaten away really, really fast. And so what I would like to see when it comes to tax reform, I'd like to make sure that we start in terms of that we start making sure that people are paying their fair share of taxes. Again, I don't really want to raise anybody's taxes, but I just want to make sure that everyone is paying their fair share. And part of that is because we're looking at even though we've done the tax increase, we haven't cut spending, so we're going to have a major budget deficit going on. It's going to add, I believe it was $1.7 trillion to the deficit by 2025, I believe was the year. And so, 2028, I believe was the year. And so I really think that we need to, we do need some tax reform in this country, but we really need to reassess how we're going to go about that and to ensure that everyone's paying their fair share of taxes.
A couple more questions. What is your opinion of the Affordable Care Act? And even if you support the Affordable Care Act, what would you do to make it better? Because even talking to some Democrats, they can see that there's some deficiencies in the Affordable Care Act that they would want to improve upon. So it's kind of a two-part question, but I think healthcare is probably one of the more important issues, so I want you to provide a couple minutes about that.
Sure. Well, first of all, as I've gone around the district to talk with potential constituents, that is the biggest thing on their minds. They do not want to lose a lot of the protections that the Affordable Care Act has put into place. For example, they want to make sure that they are protected when it comes to pre-existing conditions. They want to make sure that they're not going to be charged extra, or at least be able to, that their coverage is not going to be cut completely because they have a pre-existing condition. A lot of people are very happy about the fact that they can keep their children on their insurance plan until they're 26. And just so I have a personal experience with that. My brother graduated from college, and basically the day after, he was diagnosed with lymphoma. And he didn't have a job yet, so he didn't really have any insurance options or anything like that. But because my mother's plan allowed him to stay on until he was 26, he's got the coverage that he was able to, that he really needed. And he's been in remission for, I want to say, at least 5 or 6 years, I believe. And so that I think it's really important that those protections stay around. But I do support the Affordable Care Act for those particular points, but I do think we can do better. We need to have, where it's going to be difficult, but there are going to be tough conversations that we have to have with healthcare providers, with health insurance providers, in order to bring down costs, because health insurance costs is the #1 thing on people's minds, especially the aging population. And I think one of the ways that we need to look at this is, let's take in all the data. Let's see what, based on what the data is telling us, what is going to be the best option and most affordable, both for the government, who will subsidize some of the healthcare costs, but also for those who don't necessarily qualify for government subsidies. And so, as someone who, like I said, with a science background, I've done a lot with looking at data and looking for data-driven results, as well as collaborating with others. It's going to take a big collaboration between government, healthcare providers, pharmaceutical companies, and health insurance companies in order for us to make sure that we have a working healthcare system in this country. Now, I think one of the things that we need to look at, this may not necessarily be the answer, is a Medicare for All option. I would really like to see how the numbers crunch for that, and whether or not that's going to be fiscally responsible and sustainable for this country. I also think that one of the things that we could look at in terms of health coverage is to see if the government could subsidize maybe the primary care and the preventative type care and chronic conditions for people where those are easily treatable or commonly treated diseases. I'm sorry, I'm still making the lights up here a little distracting.
What happened with the lights? It just turned like bronze. Do we look like bronze?
No, she's real blonde now.
Yeah.
Finish your thought before you.
So, yeah, no, thank you. And so when it comes to healthcare, there are certainly improvements we can make to the Affordable Care Act. And I think that is when it comes to what this is, affordable is the key word that we need to look at. And I'm ready to have the tough conversations that we need to have with the healthcare community and making sure that everyone has access to it, whether that includes mental health and addiction treatment services. I think those are really important aspects to our overall healthcare that for the longest time have been neglected, and I think we're starting to talk about it more, which is great, but it's still not necessarily incorporated into our overall healthcare plans.
My last question is from the audience. With the United States Supreme Court in the spotlight lately, is there more than one decision the court has made that you disagreements with, and why?
So first of all, the Janus decision that came out over this last session, I definitely disagree with. I come from a union home. Both my parents were in unions, and so I think having ensuring that people who are part of unions are paying their union dues is really important to ensure that they have proper representation they have their union management there to support them also when it comes to the collective bargaining process. Because if those two things can't be supported, then it makes unions almost ineffective. And I've known firsthand that in terms of what unions mean to the middle class, it means steady wages. Both my parents had solid steady wages. It means health insurance. It means that there is someone who can help fight for you if you have a sexual harassment claim. Unions to me also mean that you're getting equal pay for equal work, and that's one of the only situations that I've had experience with in my 14-year career is when, and I've never joined a union because there's never been a union for me to join necessarily, but when I see my coworkers who work in the manufacturing side of the chemical and ag industry that I work in, they're able to get, because of they can collectively bargain, they can all work together, they are able to get better benefits, get better pay. And so I think it's really important that we ensure that if you are benefiting from being in the union, that you are paying your fair share of wages, or excuse me, your fair share of dues.
Thank you very much for your time. Democratic incumbent Nicole Galloway, who has provided a statement. Thank you for hosting a forum to hear from candidates running for office. I have the honor of serving as your state auditor, an independent watchdog making sure government is accountable to the people. In just over 3 years, my audits have identified over $300 million of government waste, fraud, abuse, and mismanagement. More than 35 criminal counts have been brought against corrupt public officials as a result of my office's work. I am a CPA and a certified fraud examiner. I started in public service as the Boone County Treasurer because I wanted to have the skills, wanted to use the skills I developed in the private sector to improve the community around me. Currently, I live in Columbia with my husband, John, and our 3 little boys, William, Benjamin, and Joseph. I think a lot about the future of our state and what it will be for my family and yours. I know that people work hard for what they have. They work hard to provide an opportunity for themselves and their families, and they expect government to live within its means, be responsible with taxpayer money, and have a balanced checkbook. They also expect government to maintain the public trust. Every day I hold government entities, large and small, accountable with this in mind. You can learn more or contact me from my campaign website, NicoleGalloway.com. Follow me on Facebook, which is Nicole Galloway CPA, and on Twitter at Nicole R. Galloway. So that's Auditor Galloway's statement. Republican Sandra McDowell is also running, but she is not here tonight. So we are going to bring up the Constitution Party candidate, Jacob Lukemeyer.
I appreciate the opportunity to be here and speak with everybody. My name is Jacob Lukemeyer. I'm the Constitution Party candidate for state auditor, as mentioned. Just a little bit about me. I've been married for 15 years. I have 8 children. I've got a bachelor's degree from Columbia College in business administration with an emphasis in accounting. And while going to school, I started a retail business. It was a family business. And with that business, I was able to develop my own accounting software and develop my own point-of-sale software and analytics software with that to help make my business more efficient. As corporations began getting into the niche market that I was in, profit margins started to fall, and I decided to get out of the business. I sold the business, and for the last 6 years, I have worked at IBM in the security compliance division. I have held several roles within that division, and currently I do data analytics. I've done automation development, as well as audit and compliance for a little over 400 clients around North America. So why do I want to be the next state auditor? Well, when I was kind of researching this office late last year, I seen that we have only been auditing like 3, maybe 5% of the audit of the entities in the state. And I noticed that, and I was reading that we hadn't updated the office in over 40 years. It's been a business as usual position. People are going in, they're focused on just what they can do, and they have not spent any time to try to make improvements in the overall way that the office is running. And so I believe that with my diverse background in business, analytics, accounting, and IT, that I can go in and actually have a different look on the office as far as stepping back and reviewing the accounting system that we're using statewide across the state agencies as well as the political subdivisions. And as well as look at it from a process standpoint and as well as from a technological standpoint. I believe we have a lot of technological advances that have occurred over the last 40 years, and I believe we can do a lot better than 3 to 5% of the offices being audited. I believe people want to see where the money's going before we increase any more taxes. I believe people want to see exactly how the money's being managed. It's really difficult to want to hand hard-earned money over to agencies where we really can't see where that money's going. So that's the main reason why I want to run. I really want to bring Missourians a much better solution in the office.
I'm going to ask you a couple questions. I think the number one question in this race is your opinion on the Clean Missouri initiative, which was mentioned in a prior candidate forum. Primarily, the reason why this affects the auditor is the auditor would be tasked with basically getting candidates to be the state demographer that would draw state House and state Senate districts under a certain criteria. It's in flux right now. I mean, literally, it was heard in appeals court today. I would assume, regardless of that decision, it's going to get appealed to the Supreme Court. I don't know if the decisions come in. I don't have my cell phone with me. What's your opinion about Clean Missouri?
Well, I kind of approached that initiative whenever, in the same way that I approach in my current position. In my current position, we actually take a look at how different teams are participating in a process, and we say, okay, we want to make sure that each team is only fulfilling the responsibility that they fulfill. And when I was looking at this initiative, the biggest section that's under controversy with this, with Clean Missouri, is the fact that the auditor is going to get this new authority. And when you look at that, it really takes a lot of the responsibility and puts it into the auditor's office. And I believe it's too much responsibility. I believe that with the constitutional authority that the auditor has is only to deal with the system of accounting and to deal with the auditing of the income and expenditures. I believe the only area of this the demographics as far as drawing the boundaries would be maybe a cost analysis. So I believe that if we were going to have an initiative like this where we give the auditor a little more authority, I believe that authority should only exist in the manner that it would be for a cost analysis and not the entire beginning of the process all the way to handing the 3 options to another agency.
One of the former Republican candidates for this office, State Representative Paul Kurtman, one of the things that he mentioned he wanted to do, and he was unsuccessful in his race for the Republican nomination, was actually try to follow through on some of the audits by going to legislators and trying to get them to pass deficiencies in certain departments that the auditor's office finds. What's your thought about that? It seems like a common sense solution, but actually following through on that can be difficult just because of how the legislature works. I'd be interested to hear your take on that.
Yeah, definitely. When I review the current audits, I see kind of a lack of detail. So what I'd like to see is a lot more detail on these audits, and I believe that you could go to the General Assembly, and if you had a lot more detail and you could provide maybe better direction as to how money can be allocated or managed. And I do believe that we currently have a deficiency in the auditor's office working with the General Assembly in the matter of trying to come up with better solutions that are more cost effective. And I believe that the auditor's office, one of the jobs that they have is to do this kind of cost analysis on top of auditing. It's not just making sure that the books all, everything matches and that we can see where all the money's going, but it's also to take a look at our current economic situation and analyze how can we do better, how can we manage this better, and I definitely agree that we need to spend more time in the General Assembly.
Last question for you. What sort of duties would you want to add to the auditor's portfolio to make that office a more effective statewide entity?
One of the biggest areas of concern that people have had, and I've had a lot of people ask me, say it's a mayor or a county official, the people petition to try to get an audit performed, and then that official refuses the audit, which they have the right to do because that entity has to pay for the audit, and if the funds aren't available or if there's a better use of funds, I can understand why those officials would say, no, we're going to refuse this audit. I believe that if we can put together a more standardized approach to offer these entities to make it more cost effective, I believe that the auditor's office should have a little more authority in going in and being able to access those records and performing the audits, but that would only be based on implementing first a more cost-effective method of doing so.
Thank you very much for your time this evening. All right, we have our next race where both candidates are here. It's the 61st District House race between Aaron Griesheimer and Pamela Menifee. So, round of applause. And again, I'm just going to ask, you can applaud after their opening statements, but please hold your applause until after we're done. I want to try to get as many questions as humanly possible. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to have Pamela go first with the opening statement. Try to keep it between 1 and 2 minutes.
My name is Pamela Menifee. I have lived in Franklin County since I was 10 years old. I went to Lundell Elementary School. I graduated from St. Clair High School. I went to Mizzou for several years. I graduated from there and moved back to Washington, where I met my husband, Ed Menifee, who's the chief of police in Washington. We had 5 children together, all of whom were very proud. I believe that people like us need to have our voices heard in Jefferson City, people who have led normal, sometimes challenging lives. I worked for the Division of Family Services for 18 years. I investigated child abuse and neglect hotlines. Prior to that, I was a dispatcher with the Sheriff's Department. So I know about how important healthcare is, how important or how difficult it is to raise children economically. And that's why I think that I would do a good job representing you for the 61st District.
Thank you, Pamela.
I'm going to stand. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Aaron Griesheimer, and I'm the Republican candidate for state representative in District 61. I'm a lifelong resident of the city of Washington. I'm a graduate of St. Francis Borgia Regional High School, and I'm a graduate of East Central College, class of 04 right here. I then went on to Southeast Missouri State University, where I earned my bachelor's degree. But more importantly, I also earned my wife's hand in marriage. I've been married to my wife, Amanda, for 12 years, and we have 2 beautiful children, Dayton and Tucker. They can be a handful at times, and you parents know. I had the opportunity to work in Jefferson City for 7 years, and it afforded me the opportunity to work with both Democrats and Republicans. And that's so important, especially if you want to push legislation across the finish line. You've got to have that working relationship. And ladies and gentlemen, I have that experience. And I appreciate your vote, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for your applause. Also, St. Francis Borgia is the school of local legend Brock Lebo, who is now doing a great job as the assistant special teams coach for the Chicago Bears. Give it up for Brock. Now let's turn to issues, and the first one that I'm going to do is from the audience. It's a lengthy question about broadband and the lack of broadband, especially in rural areas. The 61st District is a primarily rural district, although it does have part of the city of Washington in it. What would you do as a legislator to expand broadband access in your district throughout Missouri? I'll start with Mr. Griesheimer first.
Yeah, it's very important that we continue to expand broadband, especially in our rural areas, more for the benefit of our children for school purposes. I would definitely support legislation that would push broadband internet into our rural areas. I think it's also important that we push competitors into the rural areas as well. I know there's some areas in the district, as I've been knocking door to door, I've learned that there are some areas where there's only one broadband provider. And I think it's so important that we continue to push competition as well to bring down the cost of internet.
Broadband is very important to rural districts. Broadband allows us to do telemedicine, but you have to have access to the internet, high-speed access. You can also have more educational opportunities if you have internet access. Our rural schools are disadvantaged by not having internet access. Companies won't move to rural areas because there's no internet access, so again, it's very important. In the 1930s, 90% of urban dwellers had electricity, but 90% of rural residents did not. They formed electric cooperatives to get everyone electrified. In Illinois and Oklahoma, they're doing the same thing. They're using those electric cooperatives to expand broadband. And in southeast Missouri, they're also doing that. So that's something that we could do here in the 61st district by using our electric cooperatives and hopefully partnering with Ameren UE also to expand broadband. It needs to be part of our infrastructure. It's very important to the rural areas that we all have access to the internet.
I'm going to ask you both about another ballot initiative that's on the ballot, which admittedly is a redundant way to ask this question. What is your opinion of the proposition to raise the minimum wage eventually to $12 an hour by 2023? I'll start with Pam.
Okay. I support that initiative. Wages are stagnant in the United States right now. And one of the reasons it's stagnant is that our unions have been weakened continuously by legislators who pass legislation like right to work to weaken it. They also passed legislation this past session that weakened our public sector unions. So we don't have anybody to push back against businesses to increase our wages. One of the ways we can increase wages for everyone, though, is by raising the minimum wage. So I certainly support that initiative.
I have no issue with anybody making a decent wage. I think we constantly have to be mindful, though, and this is Business Economics 101. Anytime you have wages go up, you also have inflation that's right behind it as well. And so when you have that occur, you're not really gaining any ground. I have no problem, again, with anybody making a good wage, but I think we just need to continue to be mindful of that.
So another issue that I think is going to become pretty prevalent in the 2019 session is tax credits. I've known from my experience of reporting here that the historic preservation tax credit has been especially important in the Washington area. And currently the low-income housing tax credit, which has been important throughout the state, is currently frozen right now with the expectation that the legislature is going to make a host of changes to that. So it's kind of a broader question. What's kind of your opinion of these two particular tax credits? Is there anything that you would do to change them? And do you have an issue with the tax credits as far as how much money they take from the budget for services? I'll start with here.
Yeah, we have to be careful when anytime we give tax credits. I am supportive of historical tax credits, though. They have helped the Washington community and other communities as well in the district, in District 61. It's a good opportunity to create jobs as well as the boost in economic development sometimes that it provides. Again, we have to be careful with how much tax credits we provide, though, because we have to make sure we can continue to fund the entities that are general budget funds.
Pam.
And I would agree with that, basically. Historical tax credits, I think, are good, but we do have to be careful. Part of what has happened in Jefferson City is they've cut taxes so much over and over again to where it's really left us with a bare bones budget. And so we can't get some things accomplished that we really need to get accomplished. Like our school systems. There are schools, schools in Missouri, rural Missouri, that are going 4 days a week because they can't afford to go 5. So taking any more money out of our budget could be detrimental to a lot of services.
That actually parlays well into my next question. Would you support any policy that takes tax dollars and provides some sort of way to use it to pay for private schools? It's usually called vouchers, sometimes it's done through tax credits. I'll start with you.
I support public education, and there is a finite amount of resources that are available to our schools right now, so I would not support anything that took any money out of the public education system. Again, we have schools that are going 4 days a week. Teachers are some of the lowest paid teachers in the United States. Teachers should be paid like the professionals that they are. So I would not support anything that would take additional money out of the public education system.
I'm really undecided on that one. I think you have to look at the 61st district and really look at how the schools are funded. If you look at the Washington School District, for example, believe it or not, 75% of its budget is actually funded through property taxes, and the rest of it comes from state and federal funds. But that's different when you go to New Haven or you go to Herman. So I think you really have to pay attention to that. There's no one, I don't think, right answer to that question because all the school districts are funded so differently.
Couple more questions. When I was talking with your father here on politically speaking, one of the things that he mentioned was a big issue was transportation in Franklin County. And we talked a little bit about the gas tax increase, which may or may not pass. What would you do, especially if that gas tax increase does not pass, to try to bring more funding for roads and bridges in Franklin County? Because as we said before, I think this is probably one of the issues that everyday Franklin Countyans worry about more than anything else. So I'll start with you, Aaron.
Man, that's a hard question. I hope we don't get into that situation because I think with transportation, I always say, I think you get a little bit more of your investment back than what you put into it. And I always say Highway 47 is a good example of that. When we're able to expand Highway 47 from a 2-lane to a 4-lane highway in 2010, we were able to attract stores like Kohl's and Target, which my wife absolutely loves. But I, as a resident, enjoy that tax revenue that we gain from the sales taxes. And then we get to use that and put that towards our parks and other entities as well. One thing I would like to see as well is Highway 47 expanded as well from a 2-lane to a 4-lane highway. I mean, the congestion issues there's safety issues there. That's a tough question. I really don't have the answer for that one. I got to look more into that.
I agree with you 100%, Aaron.
Well, let's hope the tax passes because it needs to. And part of that, why it's so difficult is because they've cut taxes so much that they've left us in a position where we've had to ask for a gas tax increase. And if that doesn't pass, then it puts us in a difficult position of not being able to repair our roads and bridges unless we ask for a tax increase. So it is a very difficult position that we as citizens in Missouri have been put in. We have to repair our roads and bridges, not only for safety reasons, but businesses won't come here if we don't have adequate transportation systems. Tourists won't come to Missouri if our roads and bridges are unsafe. So it's something that we have to get taken care of. So I'm hopeful that the tax increase passes.
My last question for both of you is kind of a big one. It's on healthcare. One of the things that has been a lingering issue in Missouri, especially rural Missouri for years, is how to connect the working poor with healthcare, especially since Medicaid percentage is pretty low in the state. As a representative, what would you try to do to deliver healthcare, whether through private insurance or government healthcare through the Medicaid program, to people that may not qualify for Medicaid right now? I'll start with, who did I start? I'll start with Pamela first.
I support expanding Medicaid. When I worked with the Division of Family Services, I worked with many families